And welcome back to Go Baby Go TV. I'm Louie Hillman, joined by my partner, the Optimist guy, Brian Setzler. What's up, Brian?
Hey, guys.
Today we're talking about the IRA gift idea. Brian, this year, 2023, the federal gifting limit went up by a record $1.7 million for a couple, or $860,000 per individual. It is now at an all-time high of over $25 million per couple. Why does this create such an important planning opportunity for advisors and their clients right now?
Well, I think it presents a fantastic opportunity because you can talk to these folks about making sure they take advantage of it if they're wealthy enough to do so. Admittedly, this would be 0.5% of all people that live in the United States, if even. But many agents that we talk to have clients that they serve that have net worths that exceed the $25 million threshold. People that would take advantage of it usually are going to have net worths that exceed 50 million or more. They're not going to relinquish control of all their assets. It's the relinquishment of control that you mentioned the other day that seems to be part of the hurdle.
Yeah, and this conversation cannot happen without putting into perspective for that family that there is a window of opportunity that is expiring. The federal income tax cuts that has the current provision for gifting sunsets in end of 2025. So we're looking at a 2.5-year window to take advantage of this before they're cut in half, and could be further reduced because of our economic challenges and budget crisis as a country. But, is this something that you can start really working on in 2025? Is that realistic? Or is that a conversation that advisors need to be having with their clients today?
Well, I certainly think today is the time to talk about it. A lot of times, any planning like this would be in conjunction with the estate planning professional, their attorney and tax counsel. These people are going to be very busy over the next 2 years. Don't wait till next October and November to call those professionals. Why should a life insurance or financial advisor care about this, Louie? Is that oftentimes there's an opportunity to reposition assets using life insurance. So I think it's a potential selling opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about not only the opportunity to take advantage of this window before the tax cuts sunset and the provisions return to the old rules, there's real concern that not only will it be cut in half, but it could be further reduced. And we saw a preview of that from the current administration. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, there was a whole listing of proposals. It's only almost luck that they did not pass. Draconian is the only word that comes to mind about how it would have essentially made it virtually impossible for any wealthy family to convey assets from one generation to the next. The reason that's important to know, if that's the thinking in Washington, and why is it the thinking in Washington? Because they want to charge estate tax upon the death of every generation. So they keep taxing essentially the same assets that have appreciated in value over and over and over. That's Washington's objective. The reason these families should take advantage of the gifting is to try to prevent Washington from doing that. You want to keep the wealth within the family,
What are the types of assets that families typically gift outside of their estate? Can you walk us through for example?
Oftentimes, you'll see the vacation houses gifted, locations that are special like that, where family gatherings occur. That's very popular to see. Minority ownership of operating companies, family businesses, any business you can think of. Certainly if the owner is reluctant to give up operational control, he can gift a minority ownership in the operating company to his adult son and daughter, for example. And it would be very routine to see them do that.
And you were telling me about a family you're working with right now that had, at the time, used up all of their gifting a couple of years ago. I think you said it was $11 million per spouse. But because of the inflationary calculation of the annual gifting amount, there's now this window of opportunity that didn't exist when they made the gifts a few years ago. And why, in your opinion, does an IRA make sense to fill that gap, fill that window of opportunity?
Well, usually the IRA or profit sharing plan would not have been even considered for gifting because it's not really easy to do. You can't just fill a form out and change the ownership of an IRA from generation 1 to generation 2. The money within the IRA has never been income taxed. And of course, not only is it going to be subject to income tax, but also estate tax. So it's not unusual for them to retain that asset. Now that you have this huge increase over the last 2 years that have occurred, this family that I'm talking about, now all of a sudden they can give another $3 million. And they happen to have a $3 or $3.5 million profit sharing plan controlled by the 84-year-old patriarch of the family. So it's perfect to go ahead and unwind that qualified plan and consider gifting the after-tax value of that out of the estate and have it owned by generation 2 or generation 3.
And what type of financial instrument are you using within this strategy to benefit the adult children or adult son and grandchildren?
Oftentimes we're using index life insurance owned by generation 2 because that way that asset can continue to generate an ongoing tax-free stream for the lifetime of generation 2.
And then upon death of generation 2, there's a large tax-free death benefit that almost replenishes this cash flow for the future generations.
Exactly. It keeps that wealth in the family throughout time, so it's very powerful. So we do think that it opens up fantastic opportunities for the advisors who have access to those kinds of clients.
Yeah, it's a very interesting perspective, and we really appreciate it, Bryan. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is just these are not quick decisions, right? For families to make the decision to make a large gift out of their estate. Not only is it complicated in terms of what kind of entity they need to set up, what that looks like, who the trustees might be, but then you have just the psychological aspect of losing control of that asset. Talk to us real quickly about that part of it.
Yeah, control seems to be an issue for people in their 50s, 60s. Once you get to 70s and 80s and they've attended a few more funerals, not trying to be morbid, then their perspective starts to change. Their focus becomes more about their kids and grandkids because they're no longer building their empire. Their empire is already built. They're just trying to keep as much of it in the family as possible. Those are the kind of profile of people that you want to be dealing with for this sort of a decision. So you're not up against a control objection. That's the hardest one because that's a real legitimate objection. You can't talk someone out of not feeling good about relinquishing control. That's a legitimate thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course, if you have any clients that could benefit from this type of planning, we value the opportunity to be of service. Bryan, as always, really appreciate your perspective. And we'll be back next Monday. Rev up your week and turbocharge your sales.
Thanks, guys.